right, what is up, everybody? Happy Monday, National Championship Day. I'm here with two very special guests for the show. I want to welcome in Mr. Brian Lewis, my guy, and Chris Ransom from Draft Utopia, who's been on this show a few times. Obviously, y'all recognize him. It's been a while since I've done anything with Brian, so I'm happy Brian's here. Welcome, Brian. Dad life has got a hold of you. How is it out
Yeah,
there?
definitely. It definitely has. But I'll tell you, it's a blessing. Being a parent is one of the greatest gifts we get in this life.
That's
But
like
um,
absolute
but
facts.
no, it's been absolutely crazy. Like every day is an adventure, and we'll go from there. I mean, I still catch some sports every once in a while between soccer, college football, and the NBA and the NFL. I always keep up with everything. I manage.
Nice. Chris, how are we doing out there? Getting ready for the draft, I assume.
Yeah, big game tonight. A lot of key matchups we'll be discussing in a few minutes, and the Chicago Bears are on the clock now. It's now official. The Bears are on the clock. I got a feeling the pick might get moved before the end of the day, but we'll see what happens. If the Bears stay put, maybe Jalen Carter, Quentin Johnston, one of the players in tonight's game, gets picked there.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, man. The Texans, that W was the biggest L of the year for them, to be honest.
That's like OJ with the Philadelphia Eagles, almost, right?
Yep. I mean, oh
They may
my.
have just fumbled the bag completely.
Yeah, and people like I was listening to Michael and Barty this morning. He said, you know what, like at the end of the day, like maybe their guy isn't at number one, but at the same time, it's like the number one pick has so much value because if a team really wants somebody like a Bryce Young or a C.J. Stroud, they're gonna trade up to get him, and the best place to trade up to if you want your guy is number one because nobody else can take him. So
It's true.
you know,
I mean, between Stroud and Young, like, not even to really create this discussion because this will be so played out in the next couple months. But even last year at this time, I felt this way. I don't know if there's really anything separating Young and Stroud collectively as prospects. I think their grades would end up being about 2 points apart at most. But I think they're both so good at completely different things
yeah,
that, like, if I'm the Houston Texans, you have Davis Mills. Now you just fired Lovey Smith. You have a new GM, most likely, that's going to head in there, I can imagine. So if you have a whole new regime, and even if the GM's new, he probably hasn't been there that long anyway. So you want to get a coach that builds a scheme. It's going to depend on what that guy wants. So,
yeah,
like, if you get a defensive coach and you want to keep things simple and you want to control the clock via time of possession teams, team like the Patriots, the Steelers, etc. Now you might want to go in a different direction. Bryce Young might be your guy. I think intangibly he's by far the best guy. But Stroud, arm wise, I mean, he may not have the arm strength of like Joe Milton or something from Tennessee, but Stroud can throw it all over the field. He's
yep,
a pure passer.
yep,
So like it's different. If you got like a Sean Payton in a different place, like that might work out that way. Obviously, if Sean Payton goes to Denver, that's a different story. You're not going to have two quarterbacks there with Wilson, but that's the idea. That's the kind of that's what separates it. Like for Houston, I don't know if they even know what the hell they're doing 2 weeks from now, let alone 3 months from now.
I think they're gonna hire Brian Flores because Nick Casario is the GM. He's going to stay there, and he obviously wanted Flores last year as the head coach, but Flores,
That's true.
he filed that lawsuit, kind of made it a little difficult at the time to hire him. But now that that's settled, it's like a perfect
Right.
opportunity for him to bring his guy in. Um, I thought C.J. Stroud, I thought he did wonders in that Georgia game
That
because
Georgia game was
the
the best game of his career, in
the
my opinion, at
the
Ohio State. Like
Exactly.
that was amazing.
the biggest question mark that we all had about CJ Stroud is he kind of folded in big games, and he really stepped up in that game, and they should have won if we're being completely honest. Like Georgia had no
Yep.
business winning that game, so I think that was huge for CJ Stroud, and I thought that put him right back there with Bryce Young. Because I thought before that game, I thought Bryce Young was the unanimous QB1, but I think you can make an argument for CJ Stroud, like you said, Brian. It really depends on what you want out of your quarterback. So
I
it'll
mean, if you have the time to develop a quarterback, then you can open the options for some of the other two or three guys. But like, if you want a guy to start all 16 games, well, 17 games next year, geez, that's taken me a while to get used to.
yeah,
If you want someone to start 17 games next year, it's only those two guys.
yeah.
None of the other guys are ready to start year one. At least not day one. maybe by week 8 or 9 if like certain things work out. But like, no, they're the only two guys I think I could start right away.
I think Jake.
Brian speaking facts here. The other two guys that have first round grades, Levis and Richardson, they got a lot of stuff on tape they got to clean up if they either one's going to have any NFL success at the next level. I think there's potential there, but they're both extremely raw prospects compared to Levis and I mean compared to Stroud and Bryce Young. I accidentally said, but yeah.
Yeah. Irvin and I were talking about it earlier on one of our shows, and you know, I said if Levis is like a huge, like I think he has the talent, I think the physical is all there, but I think that he has to fall to the right spot. Like if he falls to the Jets, it's not gonna work. You know what I mean? Like he has to fall to a team where he's gonna get developed. And same thing with Richardson. I think Richardson, obviously elite athleticism, just a big guy. But he really struggles to complete passes, dude. Like that game against Florida State was so bad.
That was awful.
That was one of the worst games I've ever seen.
Like Richardson reminds me of Terrell Pryor, and I love and Jordan, you know this from my yesteryears, many years of we've known each other. But like I love Terrell Pryor, and I was blind to how much I love Terrell Pryor that the guy couldn't throw a freaking football.
Yep.
Like I mean, I love Terrell Pryor as an athlete. My favorite Ohio State quarterback of all time. That 2012 team would have been something special. We got USC'd. It happens. Mm-hmm. But, like, you know, that's what I think of him. And I'm like, Pryor's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. But then I look at Richardson and I go, if he goes to a team like Carolina, where they've had experience there, that's a good market, where it's not so much pressure.
Yeah.
They have a decent infrastructure around there. At least they have a team that can at least do something. Fine, like, but you can't put him in a situation like Mariota was in Tennessee. Like that's just what I feel like. And Levis, to me, Levis is Dak Prescott. No matter what, that's his ceiling.
Yeah.
So like, if a team takes him, just know you're getting a B quarterback because that guy's always going to be lacking. He just throws too many interceptions.
Well,
that's my biggest issue.
I think a big part of his problem
Ryan,
this year, though. Sorry,
Brian.
I think a big part of his problem this year was, I mean, he lacked a lot of skill talent around him.
That's true.
You know, like.
And Sam Howell had the same problem in North Carolina.
Yeah, you know, he lost Wendell Robinson, and then, you know, Wendell Robinson, second round, third round pick, I forget. But that was his number one wide receiver, and, like, they didn't have anybody that could fill his shoes. I heard him. And just like you said, just like Sam Howell the year prior.
Yeah, and, you know, Howell obviously was thought about as a number one possible pick, and I'm like, well, number one might be too high. He's good, and I feel like if Washington give him a chance next year, Howell will be like a very Alex Smith type of quarterback that they missed.
Yep.
But I don't know if he's going to get that chance because I just think like if a front office is looking at Will Levis, you're looking at that arm talent, and I'm like, bro, I get it, but I would also be pounding the table for Drake May next year.
Yeah.
I go, May is Levis times 2.
Caleb
I was going over the cap situation because I was taking some early offseason outlook notes on each team, and the Panthers are the wild card to get the QB not named Bryce Young or Stroud, because I look at Corral, and Corral was Carolina's QB1 last year. Right. I'm not saying he is the definitive starter. I think Richardson has a higher ceiling, and I think he can read more progressions than Corral if you develop him. But Carolina's only going to have $1 million cap space next year. So they'll have $80 million in 2024 and $150 million in 2025. But the only way the Panthers could get a QB is if they cut in free agency, is if they cut Shaq Thompson and they get Taylor Heineke on a bridge deal with Corral. And then they bring back Walker as an ERFA. I don't know if they'll do that.
They're going to have to restructure a couple deals to make that work. But Carolina's they're in the same situation Minnesota was in 3 years ago. Now, Minnesota completely changed that whole squad, and it kind of worked out for them. But at the same time, I just don't think Anthony Richardson in Carolina would be a good idea. I could see where it works, like market-wise. I think that's a good place for him to go. But, like, I don't know. It depends. Like, it's just, I don't know. Like, they've had how many quarterbacks they've had there in the last 5 years, and they all seem to, like, show the same progression. Like, they're not getting any better. You have P.J. Walker, you have Sam Darnold, you had Baker Mayfield, you had, like, none of these guys, and they're all talented guys in their own right.
Yeah.
Like, you look at Mayfield, what he did with the Rams in a couple games, and I know that he's he's still the same Baker Mayfield, but like he can make those plays happen.
I think
And
the
Carolina
Panthers
wasn't
would
able
be
to.
better off waiting a year until Drake May, Caleb Williams are eligible. I agree with you, but the only QB they can afford as a bridge QB in free agency is Taylor Heineke, who's seeking anywhere from 4.5 to 10 million a year. That's probably the most affordable QB because if you cut Shaq Thompson, that saves you 13 million against the cap, and that would give you 14 million to spend on a QB. And I think the only QB they could afford for 14 million is Taylor Heineke, unfortunately.
Good
Probably
luck.
right.
Good luck with
Unless you
that.
trade for Mac Jones, because I don't think that's off the table for New England Patriots. I don't think Mac Jones is safe right now in New England
Yeah,
or anyone.
Bailey Zappi was better.
I would argue, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like, and you know, Brian, we were talking about a little bit earlier. Like, you know, I think there's a real possibility Cliff Kingsbury ends up as the offensive coordinator of New England next year. I think it's a legit possibility.
No, I think he headed back to college.
Who's gonna hire him at this point, though? They already got
That's
their.
what I'm saying.
Bama needs an OC.
If Bill O'Brien leaves, so that's the
Bill
only
O'Brien
variable.
might be headed back to New England because Bama didn't renew his contract. So Bama gonna need an OC. Georgia might need one because of that their head coach is getting their OC is getting head coaching offers and NFL offers. Oregon already filled their position, but it's gonna be like 5 to 7 major Division One teams needing head offensive coordinators pretty soon.
He can go to
I mean, say if
UNLV.
Harbaugh leaves Michigan, I can see Kingsbury going to like. I mean,
Yeah,
I
go
can
to Michigan.
There's no chance Michigan hires him as their head coach, though.
You know what I'm saying?
No, never a head coach. No,
Yeah,
they would hire Les Miles before that.
I mean, he could go
Ohio
to.
State might need an OC too because they saying
That's true.
Hartline. They saying Hartline might be headed to the NFL.
If Vrabel had his way, he would be the OC in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
He should just go to UNLV.
They already hired an OC.
Well, he should go there anyways.
Be hilarious if Matt Rule hired him as offensive coordinator. That's not going to happen for Nebraska. The Cornhuskers can keep having those 90s fantasies.
Damn, Purdue needs a whole coaching staff, so they be.
Well, they hired
Purdue would be a solid job for
the
him,
defensive coordinator from Illinois. What's his name?
The guy that was there when Lovie Smith was there.
No, the guy that was their defensive coordinator last year.
The only way he's going to be out of a job is if he chooses not to coach. Like if he takes a year off.
Yeah, he may take a year off. Why not? He got $30 million. You know what I mean?
What if McVay steps down?
I don't think he'll be a head coach again though. I just don't see that happening. All right, let's talk about this game tonight though. We got a game kicking off here in about 30-45 minutes. The teams are warming up right now. Georgia versus TCU national championship. One of these teams I think we kind of all expected to be here. One of them, you know, I don't think anybody expected to be here. Apparently, there is one person in the world that has a 500-1 ticket on TCU to win the national championship. It's a nice ticket right there. $20.
Is it Chris?
I don't know who it is. They were talking about it on VSiN today.
I think it's the same guy who bet the money on the Astros to win the World Series. This old timer,
mattress ad or something.
No, he put a bet on them to win the national championship recently. But someone before the season bet $20 on TCU 500-1. So $20 at 500-1, that wins $10,000.
Crazy.
That is insane.
So that's a huge ticket right there. That guy is definitely gonna be watching this game tight tonight. But obviously Georgia's a heavy favorite. This line opened 14. It's been bet. It went down to 12. It's been bet back up to 14. So we're seeing a lot of Georgia money come in the last couple of days. Irvin and I talked about it on Wednesday. I definitely anticipated this line move to happen. I thought a lot of people would bet on Georgia once the line fell. That has been the case. But what do you guys think about this game, Chris?
I'm looking at a few key matchups. I could break the cornerbacks on TCU and Georgia. Keely Ringo versus Travius Hodges Tomlinson. How are those guys going to react to passes that Stetson Bennett and Max Dugan throw their way? Is Quentin Johnson going to be able to step up and win a one-on-one against Ringo? Because if he can, I think he would cement himself as wide receiver one, and he'd probably enter the discussion to potentially be a top 5 pick, because right now Ringo's probably in that 5 spot behind the QBs Carter and Will Anderson. So it's possible if TCU wins this game, I'm picking Georgia to win, but if TCU were to win and Quentin Johnson dominated, it's possible that Quentin Johnson could enter the top 5 conversation for the NFL draft.
He might already be there, though. I think I showed Irvin Jordan a CBS mock draft, and they had him number 4, I think.
Yeah, they had him wide receiver 1. He's definitely cementing himself as wide receiver 1 for sure.
So,
what do you think about the game, Brian?
I mean, TCU, what a year. I mean, Max Duggan just absolutely, like, I know he was like a 4-star recruit, so it's not like a surprise that he's lived up and gotten TCU here, obviously. But like just the fact that all these TCU teams over the years, and I'm of a certain age where I remember TCU being like a mid-major and that whole conversation and how they would never get there. And I may feel like those TCU teams of yesteryear may have more talent in certain places, but this team by far is just something else. Like they found ways to compete in close games. Max Duggan is always like pristine in the fourth quarter. I don't know if he's like a next level prospect. I'm not totally convinced about all that yet. But like, my God, this team's something. But Georgia, let me tell you, the first half of the season they dominated people.
Yep.
And then that Kent State game, something happened, and they've been kind of topsy turvy ever since. And I just feel like if Georgia plays with the energy they played against, like say, Oregon or Florida, South Carolina, that could be trouble for TCU. But if they show Florida, up the way they did,
they kind of let Florida back into that game.
They did. But like, that's just an example. Like the way they treat those rivalry games, that's the way they have to treat tonight. And I feel like with Ohio State, they kind of were like coasting through some of that game.
Like Missouri, the Missouri game.
Missouri's a great example.
Yep. That's what kind of worried me is when they played that Missouri game. I mean, dude, they struggled in that game. Offensively, they really struggled to move the ball against Missouri. And TCU, while obviously they're not the greatest defensive team, they did really well against Michigan. They really shut Michigan's run game down aside for one 66-yard run. You know what I mean? They weren't able to move the ball on the ground basically the rest of the night. So I think it's a similar game plan here because if Stetson Bennett's going to beat me, so be it, dude. You know what I mean? Like, I'll live with that. But I cannot allow Georgia to beat me on the ground. You know what I mean? If they're going to beat me, it has to be Stetson Bennett and his Van Wilder ass. Like, has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like time of possession is going to be key, too. I mean, if TCU can get, let's say, to that 25 to 30-minute mark, if they can stay somewhere in there and not turn the ball over more than twice, I think they're in this game till the very end.
Yeah.
But again, you let that Georgia defensive line run free, and then you start letting them call whatever blitzes they ever want to do, and now you're in trouble. You can't let them control the tempo.
Yeah.
Steve Avila did a great job against Michigan's defensive line. The combo of Mozzie Smith and Chris Jenkins Jr., he did very good against that combination. He's going to have to bring the same energy against Georgia tonight and Jalen Carter for the Horned Frogs to have any chance.
Yep.
I mean, and some of the guys let's talk about another guy. Speaking of Johnson, another guy on the defensive side of the ball for Georgia. Jalen Carter could have a legitimate case to be the best defensive player on the draft board, and tonight could be his showcase.
Yep.
In a very big way.
Yeah.
I agree. Irv, what do you think? Has your opinion changed at all since we talked on Wednesday?
Yeah, it hasn't changed much. Honestly, Georgia, like I said, they got the ability to be dominant. But this whole second half, we've seen a team that played down to their competition, haven't been consistent on the defensive side of the ball. And it should have cost them versus Ohio State, but we've seen what Ohio State kicker did. Twice. So, and Duggan isn't the thrower of the ball that CJ Stroud is, but he's a damn good runner and he has a great deep ball. Now, what he does have to watch is his underneath stuff, though, because he did throw I think he threw 2 interceptions against Michigan, and both of those were on intermediate routes. So he got to get the timing down with those and be careful because I'm sure Kirby is going to disguise some coverages and try to confuse him. He couldn't really do it to CJ because CJ has great athletes on the outside, and they knew they had to run man most of the game because if they ran zone, they would have just the zone. Ohio State would have just basically ran them out of it with the routes and the route concepts that they run. So I'm more of the thought of I think Georgia's second half is going to catch up to them tonight because TCU, they're dialed in. Their defense is physical. If they can hold up against Michigan, they could definitely hold up against Georgia. Georgia O-line is not as good as Michigan's because Michigan has won that award 2 years in a row. And I forgot the name of the award that you win for the best offensive line in college football. But Lincoln Riley, little brother, has been calling amazing plans. I'm sure he drawed up a great game plan against Georgia to attack what they don't do well. And Keely Ringo got to show us something, man, because he got cooked versus Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yep.
And it's a big chance he might get cooked tonight versus Quentin Johnston because Quentin Johnston is just as big, just as good running. He might not be as good. He's a
He
good.
might not have the hands of a Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, he
Jr.,
might
I'll
have
put it
had the
that way.
hands, but the route running is on par, and I think he's faster than Marvin Harrison Jr. So, yeah, Keely
That'll
Ringo's
give
going to have his hands full. And one thing to do, look out for Georgia too. That targeting call is big for them because now their starting safety doesn't have to miss the entire first half.
Yep.
Because he would have had to miss the first half of this game if that targeting would have stood. That could help him, but if Gerald Washington not playing, that's going to totally change the run blocking scheme as well. TCU could take advantage of that. I just think TCU is just too hot right now, man, because nobody saw him winning. Nobody saw him beat Michigan. Everybody thought they could hang around for a half, a quarter, and Michigan's physicality would start wearing on them, and they was going to wear them down. Everybody thought it was going to be Michigan and Georgia in the championship game. This game really reminds me of USC versus Oklahoma in 2004. Nobody picked the Trojans. Oh, can this defense hold up? Can this offense score any points? We're gonna find out pretty soon.
Yep. No, I agree. This is the fourth time since 1998 since BCS was adopted as the national championship that we've had a double-digit favorite. Double-digit favorites in those games are 1-3 against the spread, with the Dogs winning outright twice. Ohio State being one of them against Michigan, Brian. They were 10.5 point dogs in that game. So I think that, like, I agree with Irvin. Obviously, you know, we've talked about these games fucking a lot. You know what I mean? We've been back and forth. I think I'm in agreement that I think that TCU is just really hot right now, and this is the most dangerous position for a team like Georgia because you're expected to win this game. Everybody thinks you're going to win this game. The pressure is on you to win this game, whereas TCU has zero pressure because nobody expects them to win. Nobody expects them to be here. They're just playing with house money at this point. They got nothing to lose.
Irvin compared this to
crazy.
Oklahoma USC, but I would compare this to USC versus Texas because Texas was in the same situation that USC was in 04. There was zero pressure on them. They were the consensus number 2 team that year. USC was the consensus 1, but everybody picked USC to win that game, and Texas surprised people then. So I would compare this to Texas USC, and hopefully it is that good of a game because that was like the last real classic we got in the championship.
Chris, we don't talk about that game.
I'll try to refrain
something-
from talking about it on this
something
show.
that,
You don't
now,
bring
the
up
only
that
thing I'll
game,
mention from
Trojan
that
fans,
game
Chris.
is how good Texas was at finishing football games that whole season that year. And that's the one TCU comparison parallel that they definitely have.
Yeah, they can finish games strong.
But we also got to factor in USC. It's just doing some of the most boneheaded shit ever in that game. But
They pulled an
Texas-
0-2 Miami in that game, no doubt
Texas
about it.
did win.
Yeah, we don't talk about that game. That game is blacked out in my memory. I don't remember. We don't do that. All right, we got some player props I want to throw out here for you guys. See what you guys think. So, first touchdown scores, we got Brock Bowers at plus 450. So basically 4-1. Kenny McIntosh 5-1 plus 500. Lad McConkey plus 600. DeJuan Edwards plus 700. Adonai Mitchell plus 700. Stetson Bennett plus 900. Those are basically the rest of the guys are like long shots for Georgia. And then for TCU, we got Kendre Miller 3 to 1, Amari Demercado plus 300 3 to 1, Quentin Johnson plus 400 4 to 1, Max Duggan 5 to 1 at plus 500. The one I thought was interesting, no TCU touchdown plus 3,000, no Georgia touchdown plus 10,000. So the market's basically saying like there is a chance TCU may not score a touchdown. What do you guys think about, like, if you had to make a wager on this one, what would you put your money on here?
I'm going with a long shot, Jordan, and a player you didn't mention, Kenny McIntosh, is probably in the plus 1,000s.
He's plus 500.
Okay, plus 500. Thanks.
He's the second betting favorite for Georgia. I thought I said his name. Did I miss him? I skipped.
No,
over
you
him?
did. You did say it.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I didn't hear
I
it.
would
That's
say
on me.
out of all of them, what's interesting is if Georgia gets the ball first, Bowers definitely could be a key element. If they score on the first drive, like you want to start the game, you want to run the ball, play action. Bowers is going to be getting targets in the early part of that game to kind of solidify themselves. If Georgia decides to go that route, now I could see TCU going first play. We're going for the bomb. We're going for the big play. We're going to let them know we're here. Like that is what, and plus that just seems like a total Sonny Dykes call too, by the way. So let's just go for the number 8 right down the middle of the field to Johnson. That could be the first touchdown of the game. I could totally see that happen for TCU.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, a big first play for them would actually be like, holy shit, that would be an earth-shattering event. TCU is actually here, and I think that would set the tone for the game right away too.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's going to happen, because if it happens, then fine. But like, that would be something.
I mean, there's no better way as an underdog. Like I said, they got nothing to lose. You know what I mean? So it makes perfect sense. Obviously, we're probably going to see maybe some fake punts. TCU is going to have to do whatever they can to get momentum, keep momentum, and they got to put up points to win this game. And Georgia's no joke, so I mean, they're going to have to figure it out. Irv, what do you think about any of these first time TD scored props?
I would say if it is TCU first time or first score, it's either gonna be Duggan running it, DeMercado, or Johnson. A dark horse would be their tight end because he's 6'7", and he's a pretty damn good red zone threat. Wiley, I think, is his last name.
For TCU?
Yeah, they got a
Jared Wiley.
Is the tight end listed?
Yeah, he's plus 6,000. Hell of a long shot.
That'll be a good solid long shot because they target him a lot in the red zone. And for Georgia, it's either gonna be McIntosh, Browers, or Stetson Bennett might run it in on his own. He can scramble.
Yep.
What's his name? You called him Van Wilder?
Yo. Bro, he's like 28 years old, man. Hey, he's gonna be a hell of an insurance salesman next year, though. I'll tell you that much. He's
gonna be like Brandon Whedon. He probably gonna get drafted like the 4th or 5th. Well, Brandon Whedon got drafted in the first round. It was 28. Costa
do a job.
Your boy.
I've seen Georgia use their defensive linemen as fullbacks in the past. If Jalen Carter got the first touchdown, that would just be an ultimate way for the sports books to profit off of the game.
Oh man,
he's not listed, so you'd have to take a flyer on other, which is only plus 1,000, so it's not great odds.
Okay,
unfortunately. All right. What about for quarterback passing touchdowns? They got Duggan over 1.5 TDs at minus 110, under 1.5 TDs minus 120, over 239.5 yards minus 115, under 239.5 yards minus 115, over a half an interception minus 225. So they're saying he's definitely going to throw an interception probably. And then under a half an interception plus 165.
Because TCU had 2 pick sixes versus Michigan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but this is Duggan. This isn't even Bennett. This is Duggan.
Oh, okay.
For Bennett, we got over 2.5 TDs plus 150, under 2.5 TDs minus 205, over 280 and a half yards, minus 120, under 280 and a half yards, minus 110, over a half an interception, minus 105, under a half, plus 115. What do you guys think about these
So
quarterback
with
props?
Duggan, I'm going over on the touchdowns. I think he'll definitely get 2 TDs. I'd be pretty confident on 2 passing touchdowns. However, the yards, I would be maybe a little bit over, but I'm not totally confident on that because I'm not sure as to how he might get more yards on the ground. They might just throw and decide, hey, I'm just going to scramble for a lot of yards.
What's crazy?
Georgia made it.
What's crazy to me is that the market's saying like, oh, Stetson Bennett's going to be throwing the ball a lot, but like he's only thrown over 280 yards twice this entire season.
Right.
You know, and
yeah, that's a guy. I don't know. I mean, I feel like in a big game like this, they may just let it fly, and that's great that he can have the one big anomaly game, and that's whatever. But like, Bennett seems like this is going to be like a 220, maybe 2 touchdowns, maybe 1 or 2 picks.
yeah.
And that could be the case with Duggan too. But I mean, with Duggan, I still feel like, as I said, like if they can get off on that first drive and just set the tone right away, and keep things simple, then he could get the 300 yards. But it's also like a tall task against Georgia when you're not C.J. Stroud and Marvin Harrison Jr. is not your number 1 receiver. So like at the same time, you have Johnson, and that's great. But who else on that TCU receiving core is going to step up?
Yeah, and TCU on
That's
defense too. They're good against the pass. 32nd in predicted points added against the pass. 21st in success rate. So I mean, it's not like quarterbacks are going out there and just throwing all over them every week. And they play in the Big 12. You know what I mean? Which is a lot of spread offenses, heavy offense oriented. So that kind of caught my eye. I did bet Stetson Bennett under 280 and a half yards. That's one of the plays I did make because, like I said, he's only gone over that twice this year, one of them being the last game against Ohio State. And I think TCU's good enough. Their secondary is good enough that they can contain Georgia's passing game. Especially, we don't know if Williams is going to play yet, right? So that's a huge loss for them. So it'll be interesting.
I mean, even if you look at TCU throughout the regular season, like I just feel like, and I still feel like this to the very end. The reason why I feel like Duggan would be an over, and I'd be a pretty confident over at this point, is just look at how he plays late in games, right? If TCU's in the game, he's going to elevate the way he plays.
Yep.
So his numbers are going to be better than what you might think they look like watching the game. So like, that's one thing I'm also keeping an eye on. The stats could be totally inflated.
What about Max Duggan rushing touchdown? Over a half is plus 115. Under a half is minus 150. See, I think that one's low too because I think how many rushing touchdowns does he have on the year? He definitely has like 10 on the year.
He got a good amount.
Where is he at? Max Duggan.
I'm looking it up right now too. I think so. He has 32 passing touchdowns, and then
Let me see his passing.
8 rushing.
8 rushing. Damn, that's less than I thought. I thought he had way more than that. But I still think he's due. I think they got to utilize him because Georgia has been susceptible to scrambling quarterbacks, right? Jaden Daniels, Anthony Richardson came back against them, and C.J. Stroud. I mean, a big part of why Ohio State was successful because they were actually using C.J. Stroud running the ball. That opened
One of my
things up.
biggest freaking gripes against him is that he doesn't take his yards more often.
Yep.
That's really the only negative I have on that guy.
I think he learned that though, Brian. He started doing it against Georgia.
Yeah, going 0-2 against Michigan finally made you open your eyes. Wonderful. That's wonderful, CJ.
I know I can relate to Brian. I'm an Ohio State fan too.
Oh, both of you guys like to lose often? That's crazy.
I guess so, yeah. Well, better than being my cousins the last 15 years as Michigan fans. I'll put it that way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. All right, we got some rushing props, touchdown props. DeJuan Edwards over a half a touchdown plus 140, under a half minus 185. DeMarcado over a half plus 145, under a half minus 195. McIntosh over a half minus 190, under a half plus 140. What do you guys think about those wins?
See, I have a feeling we're gonna have a lot of. I think we're gonna have the. I think there's gonna be a lot of. I think both teams are just gonna throw the ball out tonight. They may run early, but I feel like eventually both teams are gonna want to take their shots.
I hope not, Brian, because I got under 280 for Stetson Bennett, so I hope he's not throwing a lot.
I
Doesn't
think
mean
the
they'll be
game's going to
completed
go
passes.
similar to how Brian described it, like a lot of the deep passes, play action to the tight ends. I think we're going to see a lot of that, but we're also going to see a lot of goal line touchdowns too. That's kind of how I envision this game going.
So a lot of rush.
I mean, if both defenses can create turnovers, and just kind of, well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, both teams played shootouts in their last game. Yep. All four teams scored 40 points in the playoff.
Yeah,
so like crazy. We didn't get blowouts. We got two really good games, and thank God we had that, because then people won't be complaining about these playoff games are jokes. But like at the same time, the elements of what even JJ McCarthy, who's a quarterback that I don't understand like how Michigan can hype him up at all. I don't get it.
Yeah.
But like that dude put up 40 points against Georgia. So like if Duggan can just continue to do what he's doing, I mean, it seems like that overtime win against Oklahoma State, ever since this team's been, I'm telling you, TCU is going to stay in this game. And as long as they don't get too excited early, I just feel like we're going to have, I think it could be a game in the 30s.
The total has moved from 63.5 to 61.5 today. So a lot of money coming in on the under.
Interesting. I would figure it would be, say if it's a 38-31, that's 69 points. Yeah, that's about kind of where I'm expecting that to be.
So you like the over?
Yeah, definitely the over.
I like the under. I think it's going to be lower scoring than we think. I think it's going to be tighter. I think we're going to see some turnovers. And hopefully we see Stetson Bennett throw for under 280.5 yards.
That would be great.
Bro, they cannot let the college football gods cannot allow Van Wilder to win another title, dude.
He's going to Craig Krenzel 2 times.
Yeah.
Like,
this cannot happen, bro. This cannot be allowed to happen. We got to figure out a way that TCU manages to win this game. Because Stetson Bennett, how many quarterbacks in college football history win 2 back-to-back national titles? Very few. Are we going to put Stetson Bennett up there? No. God, no. Please, no. Do not do this to us. Do not do this to us. All right, so we got about 5 minutes till kickoff. So before we get out of here, who you taking and what's the final score? Brian?
I kind of alluded to it already, but I'm going to go with TCU 38-31. I'm going to say we get a Duggan finish for the ages.
All right.
It just seems like Georgia's going to pull an 0-2 Miami and just like completely like overthink it, get too stressed out. Maybe the Ohio State game, maybe they realize that they can't just turn on a gear. I feel like some teams, when they're so good, they feel like they can always turn that gear back. And Nick Saban talks about this a lot. And I feel like with Georgia, like Kirby Smart's super intense as a coach, always has been. I think that's what has really turned Georgia around since he's been there, as opposed to Mark Richt.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe with those guys, like it's just the message starts wearing thin. Maybe the second half of the season, there was something that happened in that Kent State game that maybe they just can't turn that third gear. They're gonna need it today.
Chris?
I'm rooting for TCU, but I'm picking Georgia to win. And I'm gonna say this game is actually a pretty one-sided contest. I'm gonna go 31-14 Georgia.
Ooh.
I hope it's more competitive than that as a fan of the game.
Irv?
I'm going 45-35 TCU.
Jesus.
It's going to be a shootout. Lots of points. That defense ain't what we thought it was. TCU is rolling. It's going to be a shootout, and TCU gets a timely turnover or another pick six, and they take this bad boy home.
I mean, TCU is battle tested in the fourth quarter, and I feel like that's something that that needs to be stated. Just look at the Oklahoma State game. Look at Kansas. Even when they lost against Kansas State, they fell a little behind in that game, and they somehow hung in it. They shouldn't even. Kansas State should have won that game by more, to be honest with you, the second time around.
Yeah.
But like TCU just finds a way to stay in games, and honestly, and not to make an NFL reference, but like that's why I hate the Patriots so much. they find a way to stay in those freaking games, and then they beat you. They take it away, like Pittsburgh too. They take it away.
Yeah, I do have one last Stetson Bennett question before we sign off. Mr. Irrelevant, Church's Chicken, or a Lexus dealership? Where will Stetson Bennett be working after this game?
I think he'll
State
be
BlackRock. I don't know.
I think he'll be a graduate
Big
assistant.
Farm, I like that, Herb.
I think he'll end up being a graduate assistant. Before we get out here, I got TCU 31-28, last second field goal to win the game. I think Georgia's going to be up in the first half. I think they're going to cover I think Georgia's going to cover the 7.5 point spread in the first half. I think TCU is going to rumble back, big comeback in the second half to win the game. Give me the Frogs. We're Frogs today, baby. What do they do? This thing right here.
I hope they win. I mean, I took a photo with Super Frog at the Senior Bowl 2 years ago. I was like, yeah, that's a pretty cool opportunity. He's the only mascot that wanted to take a photo with me, and Super Frog won the mascot race. They have mascot races during the commercial breaks. It's kind of fun. I wish they would air those on the NFL Network.
TCU's national championship. Didn't they win in 1938? That was like Doak Walker before he passed away in World War II. That was nice. That's crazy to think about. TCU, a program that's been. I just find us coming full circle because I remember the LT TCU. I remember the Gary Patterson years. You know, and now it's like
when they beat Wisconsin.
Exactly. Like it's come full circle for TCU, and this is just a great story. And also to prove to the Boise State fans that like your athletic director is the reason that you're not playing these big time football games. Like that's all. Not to put a shot at Boise State, but like they could have been in the big conference if they didn't whine so much.
Yep, I agree. Well, fellas, thank you for joining us. Enjoy the game. Irvin and I will be back after the game. We'll be recapping it. So thank you guys. Enjoy the game. We got to get both of you guys on during draft so we could talk some NFL draft too. But we appreciate you guys. Everybody enjoy the game. For Brian, Chris, Draft Utopia, go to draftutopia.com, check him out. For Swerve and Irvin Washington, I'm Jordan Stacks on Stacks, lads. Enjoy the game. We'll be back later. Peace.